Hello, my friends. It's book review time. I have loved this book. It's quite thick. I got it 2 Christmases ago and I finally read it. It was one of my best books of last year and I wanted to share it with you. And it really makes you think about your consumption and particularly about clothing and about articles in life. So I don't know if you know this, but I love sewing and I love crochet. I'm not very good at either, but I keep going and I keep using it, hopefully for generous joy for other people. Now, I like watching the sewing bee, and every time I've watched it, it makes me want to make clothes, and I never quite get round to it. I always find something else that somebody else needs, but I still watch the sewing bee, and every then I think, right, I'm going to get patterns out, I'm going to make clothes. But this book was interesting about clothes that are already bought, already made in this world. So, Patrick Grant. I came across this because he was doing talks and interviews about stuff. And I spend a huge amount of my time talking about decluttering with clients, decluttering our minds, our lives, our homes. But this was about not just decluttering, this was about the other end of the scale, about consumption and spending and stuff, and the effect that has on our lives and our environment. And if you have a book that fundamentally changes you, it is a great piece of art. I am not the same person as I was before I read this book. Now, I hadn't been enormously consumeristic, and I'd realized about the devils of wanting, and the effect that fast fashion and immense consumption has. But this laid it out so beautifully. Now, what was really interesting was that he lives in a world of clothing. He said, we need clothing, we don't need fashion. That's interesting, wasn't it, for somebody in that world? And for somebody who has a working life where they've made very, very expensive suits. And his premise was that you buy something that is decent quality, that is handmade as close to the producer as possible, that they have the income and that it lasts forever. You pass something through generations and it is mended and kept going. That's really the basic premise. And that fast, cheap things don't last. They cost the environment terrible damage. They hurt people. And that we need to make things because making things is good for us. Doing things with our hands is very helpful to us mentally, spiritually, economically, and socially. Now, the interesting thing about this is that he has walked the talk because he has a business called Community Clothing, and there are pictures in this book. I'm just trying to find you a nice one. This is a lovely one of somebody mending a jumper, and then this is his factory. So he's been trying to bring back skilled jobs. There you are. But the other lovely thing about this book is that it is a history. So if you want to know about the history of manufacturing, of the Industrial Revolution, it's like reading an academic book that's palatable. Now, as my undergraduate years taught me, managing to find something that you actually learn from, understand and enjoy is a real art form in education. This book is an education. I loved it also that it told stories about his life, his early life, about the fact that they have hats and scarves still that there's granny made for them, and that these things are valuable beyond measure, even though they're a bit raggy. And I loved that so much. And it also made me think about the things that we have. And I noticed, because I did a year of no buying clothes, and I did a year of only secondhand things, with one or two exceptions, but I did the majority of it. And I noticed 2 or 3 things about the thrill of the find, the thrill of buying something. Perhaps we all have that, but that also how we are tied sometimes to stuff and the money that we pay for it. And ironically, after this, I did an audit of our house because I'm always decluttering, always taking something to the charity shop. But I noticed that we didn't have very good pans. And we had an ethical wedding, so we didn't have wedding presents, even though we didn't have a lot of stuff. And our pans were really rubbish, and I didn't like cooking. And we didn't have very good sort of storage for food and batch cooking and things. So I thought it would make our life a lot better if we had 2 or 3 decent big pans that were safe and the handles were good and a decent couple of chopping boards. Then I would cook more vegetables, then we would eat better. So ironically, because of this, I bought us some new pans, which I hope were decent quality and would last a lifetime. Now, I had about 4 or 5 pans that were secondhand, that were old and that were dropping to bits. So I actually decided to pass those on. And I became very mindful about my clothing choices too. And I noticed other people who were buying ethically wherever they could. So it just 2 or 3 purchases, you can probably make a big difference. And I loved it also because his ability to write is so good. And it is a Sunday Times bestseller, and he deserves that. He's very articulate when he's interviewed, but also there's a big history of business in there, and about how you can combine all the things that you love in life and make a profession of it. And that's really, really lovely. But he also talks about things being lucky and that he was in the right place at the right time, but he'd done a ton of work and he was well prepared. And one of the things that I always love doing is making notes. But the thing was, this book, it was so good, I didn't make many notes because the tone of it was just so lovely. And let me just start with this. For the first 300,000 years of our existence, we lived quietly and harmonious with nature, content just to have a few possessions we needed, a few items to decorate our homes and our person. Every object we made to the best of our ability because we understood that only high quality things would improve our lives. So let me know if you read this, what you think. And my only caveat would be that it's really easy to say buy quality, buy once, or buy cheap, buy frequently, or something like that, is that that's really hard to get the rung on the ladder. So I understand the issue of fast fashion and I understand the issue of cheap things that don't last very well. But sometimes you need the thing now and you can't save up to get the better quality thing. So it was about a balanced perspective in these things. And that sometimes cheap things do last and it's all right. But I think he talks about the quality, the quantity, and the intention behind it. So it's about viewing that in that perspective. So let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed it too. Take care. God bless. We love a joyous book. And please, please, please subscribe, like, listen, comment, and join in because we need all the watch time and support that we can get. Take care, my friends. God bless. Be safe.